Hi everybody. In the last couple of weeks I've had a lot of people asking me about what to do with the vehicle if they're not going to be using it over the winter period. Now, I know there's plenty of you out there who use your vehicles all throughout the year, so you'll be weighing them in winter time and using them from there, but there are a lot of you as well that don't start actually going away. Now we're going into November and December. You're not going to use them in that base, you're going to leave them parked up over the winter, and get a lot of questions on what the best advice and what the best things are to do from on there. So today's video, we're going to cover that. We've got a Ocean behind us here, and we've got a Grand just over here. So I'm just going to talk you through, have a look at some of the systems that's in there, some of the things which you would do effectively if you were closing it down for the season, let's say. And then we can do another video when we get towards next year, so maybe in February time, getting it ready to get back on the road and getting out there camping as well. So we're going to make a start with the Grand behind me, and then we'll move over. Obviously, a lot of the systems are going to be the same, so we're going to be looking at things like the water tanks, what we can do with those water tanks, and obviously clearing things down as well. So let's make a start with the Grand. Now, the reason for starting on the Grand, because the Grand's got one thing that the Ocean doesn't have, or that variation doesn't have, and that's the bathroom facilities that's in there. And the one thing you definitely want to start with is the toilet area. And I'd start that for one reason as well, is because obviously the flush system uses the water tanks. So before you close all those down, it's best obviously to start with the toilet area itself. And it's very, very easy on that sense, because you'll be used to doing it all throughout the year. So we could take the cassette out from on here. So this has got the SOG system that's in here. Obviously, you can get access to in here. Give it a really good clean out. I would probably leave it with nothing in over the winter if you're not actually going to use it, just from it's in there. And I'd leave it out as well with the thing open for if you do, just make sure it's all dried so you know everything's good with that. Give it a quick wipe out if you need to, that's in there as well, so it's all looking nice. And then just pop it back in and leave put the SOG pipe back on in there as well. And then you know that then is all ready for when you're going to go away next year. The only thing you probably need to put in it then is whether you're going to put any chemicals in. Obviously, this one's got the SOG in, so you don't actually necessarily need chemicals from this one. Obviously, if you've not got that, you want to put your chemicals in. But again, I'd put those in fresh when you're starting the season off. And as I said, today's video is for those people who don't use it all the year round. So, there's a good chance now you're not going to go away from now until say March, April time next year. So it's going to be a couple of months where it's not going to have any use, but just getting these things all clean, getting them dry, and then obviously then they'll be okay for the rest of the time there. And things like water and stuff, because if it's going to be stored outside, you've got to be thinking about things like freezing and things like that. So obviously you don't want any water in your system, especially in like grey tanks, which are underneath the vehicle that's on these. Obviously they get protected from the cold as well, and that's what we're going to move on to next, is the water system. Obviously in the bathroom from on here, as I'm sure everybody does anyway, obviously you'll clean all the toilet from the top end that's in here, and obviously also going into your back that's in here and around there. Things like the hand basin that's in here as well, just make sure things like your plug holes, for example, aren't in. So they've got, obviously that'll just abbreviate and let the air move around in the vehicle and through the pipes, etc., that comes up from on there. I'll say why I would do that in a little bit when we get onto that. But that's pretty much it for the bathroom. There's not really a great deal else you need to do as far as that's concerned. We've got the sink that's in here as well, so I would keep things like your plug hole, for example, rather than it being in when you've left it, I would keep that just up, and again it just lets the aerate from in there as well as it's moving up. So obviously we need to drain down the water system, because you've probably got water in your main tank, and there's a couple of places to do that, because we need to drain down the boiler, and obviously we can drain down the other side as well. And it's also worth, just as a quick catch up as well, because your water tank's underneath here, which I'm sure you're all aware that's in here. You can also reduce the capacity of your actual tank itself from here. Obviously that gives you your 0 to 100 litres, which is on top of your tank that's on there as well. So obviously you can reduce the size of your tank as well. But in this instance, we just want to drain the entire tank and get everything out. So in your electrical cupboard here at the back, just in here and underneath the little flap, you pull this flap up, just put your fingers underneath, it comes up, that's on there, and in there you've got a hot and cold water drain down points, and on those you just take them out, and then water, what will happen, instead of water normally goes straight across there, in that direction from your tank and on the other side as well, what will actually happen instead is the water will divert it underneath. And it's easy to see that because if you actually take that out, I don't know whether we can show you or not, but you can actually see daylight if you look down. And that's what that looks like. So when it's normally, water can pass through, and then when you unscrew it, it allows water then to drop down, and obviously then it drops down through the floor and back out of the vehicle. So I'd open those so they're open at the same time, and then what I'd also then do is activate the frost protection on the boiler. So in here, you've got your little frost protection, so that's all set at the moment, so it's okay. If you twist the blue thing on top, and you'll notice the little blue thing at the bottom is now come out. And if you've been using your heater and your hot water system now, you'll hear it now, because you'll hear it all coming out from underneath the vehicle. And then I'd leave those two like that for that time of being that's in there, and just let the system completely drain out, and you'll see it draining out from both sides. It's coming out. This is the same time as well as where you could, for example, empty your grey water as well at the same time and open that vent up. And then in theory, everything's coming out of the vehicle all at the same time. So it's all being fully drained of water, so you've got no problems with frost or anything like that later on. So that's your water systems done on the Grand. Next things we're going to look at is the fridge, and whether it's the Grand or the Ocean model that's in as well. The fridge is basically the same. So for obvious reasons, you want to make sure that it's empty. I'd take everything out, wouldn't leave anything in the fridge. And don't forget your ice box. Done that many a times. When I turned the fridge off that's in there and it's got ice in there. When we came back from Campervan, completely forgot we had a block of ice in the top of the fridge. When we came back in and obviously turned the fridge off when we got back, a little bit, a bit of a leak then in the bottom of it. But anyway, so worth remembering that, just to make sure you take all that before you turn it off. Turn it all out, give it a really good clean out. And give it a good wipe and make sure that it's all on there as well. You don't want it being wet at all, because that's where you can get mold and things like that that come from the vehicle. And then obviously then if you're going to leave it on storage, you could just leave it slightly ajar rather than it being shut. And that obviously then will just give you a bit of airflow, which is in there as well in the winter when you're not using it. The next thing will be the gas on the vehicle. So my advice for that is to actually disconnect it at the back. I'd just leave that disconnected, so you just got your bottles that's in the rear of the vehicle. So disconnected gas bottles, leave those. Any gas that's in the pipes would just disperse from there. You could turn your hob on if you wanted to, that's on here, and it'll just run empty of what gas is actually in the lines. We're going to do that video in February time. Obviously we'll talk about reconnecting the gas and getting those as well. It just means that it's not connected to the vehicle and you haven't got an open circuit effectively while your vehicle's just being stood. And then on the Grand specifically, obviously we've also got our electrical system as well. Now you can turn the electrical system off, or you could just leave it on. It doesn't use any power as such. It's coming from on the systems that's on there. If you've got solar and you're leaving your vehicle outside, obviously that will keep the batteries topped up, even if it's not particularly great in this time of year with the solar that's in there as well, but it will do a little bit. Obviously, if your vehicle's in storage or you're using it during the day and things like that, I'd just leave all that switched on. So it just depends on what you're actually doing and where your circumstances are. But lots of people who leave these on a smart trickle charger for your main battery that's on the vehicle. Remember, on your Grand, your vehicle under the bonnet is actually your leisure battery. That's not your actual engine battery. Your engine battery is under the floor in the front here instead. But there are mounting points under the bonnet, which we've shown before in videos, so where those are as well. So you could leave it with a trickle charger on there, a smart charger, if you wanted it to keep it topped up. Alternatively, you're inside, you could plug a lead in the back, and obviously that would then charge your batteries if you were on 240 volts charged into the back of the vehicle. So if you're in somewhere, that's the other thing you could do, is just literally just leave it plugged in the back if you had access to that. So it depends on your circumstances, what you're doing with the vehicle, where it is, how much you're going to be using it over winter for an actual vehicle for getting around as well. So your wastewater underneath here, you just flick it open, that's in there. As you can see, water's coming out, that's in the waste tank that's on there, and then to turn it back off from on there. And when you're drawing all the water down, I'd leave that open for quite a while and let it all draw down from on there. I probably wouldn't leave it open once actually done the drawdown. I'd close it back up again. And the reason for that, depending on where your vehicle, where you're going from, you don't want anything climbing back up into that water tank and getting up from on there. And you might think that's a bit, what's going to climb up there? It's a fairly big pipe that's on there. You'll be amazed. And obviously you've got things like spiders and stuff like that. You probably don't want them all climbing into your vehicle. And this is assuming your vehicle's going to be stood for a while as well when it's there. Just something to worth considering, because things like field mice, for example, love electrical cables. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced it or not, but we do get it in the workshop. We get vehicles coming with electrical problems. You start undoing things and they've just eaten half of the wiring loom under the bonnet of the vehicle. So it is something real to actually consider where you're storing your vehicle if you're not going to be using it. That's in as well, and just make sure that it's not somewhere that could obviously attract vermin in that side of things as well, because that's the last thing you want, is something getting under the bonnet, making a little home for itself and chewing all your electrical cables.